Most horror movies scare you in the moment, but these horror movies have endings that get worse every single time you think about them. And once you understand what's really happening in each one, you're never gonna see them the same way again. So Frank Darabont took Stephen King's already dark story and said, you know what this needs? More child murder. The Mist has that ending everyone talks about. David shoots his kid and 3 friends because monsters are about to eat them, and then the army shows up 5 seconds later to save the day. Pretty messed up, right? Well, it gets worse when you actually think about what the movie was telling you the whole time. See, throughout the entire film, there are signs that help is coming. You hear distant gunshots, military trucks drive past. There's even radio chatter about survivor camps, but David's group is so busy panicking and listening to the crazy religious lady that they ignore every single hint. Here's the part that's going to keep you up at night. You know the woman who left the store early to find her kids? Well, she's actually alive on the rescue truck at the end. She walked out into the mist when everyone said she was insane, and guess what? She made it. David could have done the same thing, but instead he chose to have a little murder party in his Honda. The movie keeps showing you these tiny moments where someone suggests waiting or hoping, and David's crew just shoots down every idea. Every time they lose faith, every time they give up a little bit more, you're watching them walk towards that car. What makes it really twisted is that David thinks he's being merciful. He's convinced himself that shooting his child in the head is somehow better than letting the monsters get them. But the monsters weren't even close when the army showed up. The dude basically killed his son because he couldn't wait through a few more minutes of being scared. But at least David thought he was helping people with his terrible choice. And speaking of terrible choices, look, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, I'm starting to think you enjoy making bad decisions. Don't be like David from The Mist. Hit the subscribe button and the like button before you do something you regret for the next 7 days. Like murdering your child. I don't make the rules. People that don't like and subscribe, that's what they're destined to do. And speaking of the next 7 days, The Ring proves that trying to save people just ruins everything. Rachel spends the whole movie playing detective, trying to solve the mystery of the cursed videotape. She finds the creepy girl's backstory, locates her body, gives her a proper burial. You know, classic horror movie logic, right? Help the ghosts find peace and everyone goes home happy. Except Rachel completely misses the point of what Samara actually wants. When Noah dies right on schedule, Samara literally crawls out of his TV and kills him. Rachel realizes her mistake. She didn't survive because she solved anything. She survived because she made a copy of the tape and showed it to Noah. The only way to not die is make someone else die instead. This is where your brain starts working against you. Rachel has to help her little boy copy the tape so he doesn't get murdered by a soggy ghost child. But then he asks the question that ruins everything. What happens to the person we show it to? Rachel just stands there. She's got nothing, because the answer is that some random innocent person is gonna die in 7 days so her precious little boy can live. And then that person's family will have to pass it on to save themselves. And so on forever. The movie tricks you into rooting for Rachel to break the curse, but breaking it was never an option. Samara doesn't want peace or justice or closure. She just wants to keep killing people, and she's figured out how to make the good guys do all the work for her. Every time someone watches that tape trying to help, they're just adding another link to an endless chain of murder. The curse doesn't spread despite people trying to stop it. It spreads because people try to stop it. Rachel thought she was the hero of a ghost story, but she was actually just the latest delivery driver for this nightmare. Rachel ended up screwing over strangers to save her family, which is at least a little understandable. But Nicole Kidman spends 2 hours protecting her children from ghosts in The Others, and it turns out she's actually been dead the whole time. Classic twist, right? But the real punch comes when you realize what actually happened in that house. Grace didn't just die in some accident. She had a full mental breakdown, grabbed a pillow, and suffocated both her kids while they slept. She then took a shotgun and blew her own head off. The movie shows you this in a flashback that lasts about 10 seconds, but that's the entire story right there. Now, after seeing this, your brain starts connecting dots you wish it wouldn't. Remember how Grace kept all the curtains closed because her kids were allergic to sunlight? Yeah. That's because dead people don't need to worry about UV rays. All those strict rules about locking doors and keeping the house dark, yeah, those weren't protecting anyone. That was just Grace's subconscious trying to keep the truth locked away. The worst part is watching Grace get angry at these intruders who keep bothering her family. She's pointing shotguns at thin air and threatening to call the police on people who are just trying to live in their own home. The living family isn't haunting Grace and her kids. Grace and her kids are haunting them. Every time Grace fights to protect her children, she's actually terrorizing innocent people. When she screams, "This is my house," she's technically wrong. It stopped being her house the moment she turned it into a crime scene. And those 3 servants who know way too much about the house's history, well, they died there decades ago, which means Grace's family isn't even the first group of ghosts hanging around. This place is basically a supernatural apartment complex where nobody pays rent and everyone's dead. Grace at least thought she was trying to protect someone, unlike these next people. Hereditary makes you think you're watching a family fall apart after a tragic accident. Surprise? There was no accident. Every single that happened to the Grahams was planned by a cult that's been watching them for years. Charlie getting her head cut off by that telephone pole? Yeah, the cult carved their symbol into that exact pole. They knew she'd be in that car, on that road, at that exact moment. Peter hitting his head on his desk at school wasn't some random panic attack either. The cult slipped him something to make him lose control, just to mess with his head before the big finale. Angie's mom wasn't just a weird old lady who loved her granddaughter too much. She was a cult member recruiting other members through grief counseling and art classes. Joan didn't accidentally meet Annie in that parking lot. She was assigned to befriend her. Even those miniature dollhouses Annie makes aren't just a hobby. They're literally recreating the family's deaths before they happen. The cult needed a male host for their demon, so they set up Charlie's death to free the spirit and move it into Peter. Every argument, every breakdown, every moment where the family could have helped each other was blocked by cult interference. They turned the parents against each other and made sure Peter felt guilty enough to do something drastic. What really messes with your head is realizing the grandmother probably signed up her own family to be sacrificed. She knew her daughter and grandkids were going to die horribly, and she was totally fine with it as long as she got to hang out with demons in the afterlife. This movie isn't about grief destroying a family. It's about how evil people can weaponize grief to get what they want. And what they wanted was to throw a birthday party for Satan. At least those cult members had a plan though, which is more than most people can say. The Descent has 2 endings, and if you saw the American version, you got robbed. Sarah fights her way through a cave full of monsters, watches all her friends die, then crawls out into sunlight and drives away. Roll credits, everyone goes home happy. But that's not actually what happened. The real ending shows Sarah walking up back in the cave. That whole escape sequence, that was just her brain trying to comfort her while she bleeds out in the dark. She's been sitting there the entire time, probably with a few broken bones and definitely with no way out, just hallucinating about birthday cakes and her dead daughter. This completely changes how you watch Sarah's hero's journey through the cave. Every moment where she seems to grow stronger, you're actually watching someone slowly lose their mind. Sarah doesn't become a badass survivor. She becomes a person so broken that her brain has to invent a happy ending just to cope with dying alone. Even worse, Sarah stabbed her friend Juno and let her to get eaten by monsters right before her escape. So her last real action was murdering someone out of jealousy and spite. Then her brain rewarded her for that by showing her a nice fantasy where she gets to see her daughter again. The movie tricks you into thinking Sarah earned her freedom by being brave and resourceful. But bravery doesn't matter when you're trapped under a mountain with a bunch of hungry cave goblins. Sometimes the ceiling just falls on you. And that's it. Game over. The final shot of Sarah smiling at her imaginary daughter while monster noises get closer is supposed to be peaceful, but it's actually the most depressing thing ever filmed. But ultimately, Sarah only thought she was alone. But Jay had real enemies he never even knew about in Kill List. Jay thinks he's just a hitman with 3 targets on his list: kill a priest, kill a librarian, and kill someone called the Hunchback. Easy money for an ex-soldier who needs the cash. What could go wrong? Well, it turns out Jay's been getting played since before the movie even started. That dinner party at the beginning where Fiona carves a weird symbol behind his bathroom mirror, well, she's marking his house for a cult. Every person on Jay's kill list thanks him right before he murders them because they're all cult members who signed up to die. They're not victims. They're volunteers in some twisted ritual designed to turn Jay into the perfect killer. The cult has been watching Jay's family for months. They know his wife. They know his kid. They have photos of them doing normal family stuff. But Jay doesn't find this out until he's already killed 2 people and started enjoying it a little too much. By the time Jay reaches the final target, he's been completely broken down. The cult throws him in a ring with a hooded figure and tells him to fight to the death. Jay wins, obviously, because he's been trained for this his whole life. Then they pull off the hood and Jay realizes that he just murdered his own wife and son. They were tied together under that cloak, made to look like one person, and Jay stabbed them both to death while a bunch of robed weirdos cheered him on. The cult crowns Jay as their new leader, which is a pretty hollow victory considered he just killed everyone he cared about. They didn't want him to be their hitman. They wanted him to sacrifice his family, and they spent months grooming him to do it willingly. So yeah, Jay got tricked into murder. But Caroline got tricked into something way worse in the skeleton key. Caroline takes a job caring for an old man who can't talk after his stroke. Sweet gig, right? Help a sick person, make some money, live in a big house in Louisiana. What's the worst that could happen? Well, she ends up getting her soul stolen by two people who died in the early 1900s. Caroline doesn't believe in hoodoo magic at first, which is exactly what saves her life for most of the movie. The evil can't touch you unless you buy into it. But Violet keeps pushing and pushing, showing Caroline all these spells and rituals, until finally, Caroline thinks, okay, maybe this stuff is real. That's when they get her. See, Violet and Ben aren't actually Violet and Ben. They're Mama Cecile and Papa Justify, the hoodoo practitioners who got lynched decades ago. Right before they died, they jumped into the bodies of two kids and have been body hopping ever since. They've been alive for over a century just by stealing new bodies every time the old one wears out. Caroline figures this out way too late. She tries to save Ben by doing what she thinks is a protection spell, but she's actually performing the ritual that lets them steal her body. The second Caroline truly believes the magic is real, Cecile jumps into Caroline's young, healthy body, and Caroline gets stuck in Violet's ancient dying one. Now, Caroline can't talk, can't move, and can't tell anybody what happened. She gets shipped off to a nursing home under Violet's name, while the body snatchers inherit all her stuff and start looking for their next victims. The paperwork is already signed. Caroline is legally dead. Violet and Ben get to keep living in stolen bodies, and nobody will ever know the difference. So yeah, Caroline lost her body to strangers, but Gordon from Session 9 lost his mind to himself. Gordon's working a cleanup job at an old mental hospital with his crew. Pretty standard stuff. Remove some asbestos, make some money, go home to the wife and baby. Except Gordon never makes it home because he killed his family on the first day of the job. Those phone calls where Gordon talks to his wife, if you look closely, you'll see the phone isn't even plugged in. He's having full conversations with nobody while his coworkers watch him lose his mind in real time. All those guys who keep leaving the job early or going missing, yeah, Gordon murdered them. Hank shows up later wearing sunglasses and acting weird because Gordon gave him a lobotomy with tools from the hospital's old surgery room. Mike disappears after listening to too many therapy tapes. Phil just vanishes completely. Meanwhile, Gordon walks around acting confused about where everyone went. He genuinely doesn't remember killing people because his brain has completely snapped. The old asylum has this evil presence that feeds on broken people, and Gordon was already pretty broken when he showed up. The therapy tapes Mike found tell the story of a patient named Mary who had multiple personalities. One of those personalities was called Simon, and Simon only comes out when someone is weak and wounded. Sound familiar? By the end, Gordon is sitting in that creepy hospital theater surrounded by the bodies of everyone he murdered, including his wife and baby at home. He's been carrying around their deaths for days without even knowing it. Simon's voice echoes through the empty halls saying, "I live in the weak and the wounded." Gordon was weak and Gordon was wounded, and Simon found exactly what he was looking for. The hospital didn't make Gordon crazy, it just gave his crazy a place to grow. Ultimately, Gordon went crazy because something evil found him. But sometimes, evil just lies there and waits for you. In the Autopsy of Jane Doe, one of my favorite horror movies, Tommy and Austin run a family mortuary business. They're professionals, they follow procedures, they do their damn jobs right. They don't ask too many questions. When the cops bring in a mysterious dead woman, they figure it's just another night at the office because they've seen this so many times before. Big mistake. Jane Doe looks perfect on the outside, but the deeper they cut, the more wrong everything gets. Her organs are burned, her bones are broken, there's a cloth with ancient symbols stuffed in her stomach, and her tongue has been cut out. Someone really didn't want this woman talking. Austin keeps asking if they should stop the autopsy, but Tommy insists they follow protocol. Cut her open, document everything, find out what killed her. Standard procedure for any unexplained death. Except Jane Doe isn't actually dead. She's some kind of witch who's been waiting centuries for someone to finish the ritual that created her. Every cut Tommy and Austin make, every organ they remove, every photo they take, they're completing an ancient spell without knowing it. Jane then starts transferring her injuries to them. Tommy's bones snap by themselves. Austin starts coughing up blood. The lights go out. Other corpses start walking around, and their cat gets murdered in ways I won't describe because this is supposed to be a family-friendly channel about horror movies that will brutally kill you. Tommy tries to sacrifice himself to save Austin, but Jane doesn't care about noble gestures. She kills them both anyway, heals up completely, and gets shipped off to the next morgue where she'll do it all over again. The morning shift finds 2 dead coroners and 1 pristine corpse that somehow survived a building full of supernatural chaos. Jane gets loaded into another van, and her toe twitches just enough to let you know that she's ready to do it all over again. Ultimately, Jane Doe only had to wait 1 night for new victims, which I can't say the same thing about Triangle. Jess goes on a boat trip with friends and ends up stuck in a time loop on a creepy ocean liner. She keeps reliving the same day over and over, watching her friends die, trying different ways to save them, and failing every single time. You might think this is one of those learn the lesson and break the cycle situations. Well, you'd be wrong. Jess isn't trapped because she needs to grow as a person or solve some cosmic puzzle. She's trapped because she killed her own son in a car crash, and this is her punishment. The universe looked at what she did and said, congratulations, you get to suffer forever now. Every loop, Jess tries harder to save everyone. She leaves notes for herself. She tries to warn people about the danger. She even becomes the mass killer herself, thinking that if she eliminates the other versions of her friends, maybe the real ones will survive. None of it works. The loop always resets. Her friends always die, and Jess always ends up back on that boat, smiling and chatting with people she's watched get murdered dozens of times. The worst part comes when Jess finally escapes the boat and makes it home, only to find another version of herself there with her son. She kills this other Jess in front of her kid, drives away, crashes the car, and her son dies again. Then she wakes up back at the harbor, getting ready to board the same boat with the same friends. Jess will never break this cycle. She'll never save her son. She'll never even remember trying to save her son. She just gets to experience the worst day of her life on infinite repeat, and each time it feels like the first time. Jess ultimately got punished for her mistakes, but Kat from the Blackcoat's daughter made hers on purpose. Kat gets possessed by a demon at her Catholic boarding school and murders 2 nuns by chopping their heads off. Pretty standard demonic possession story, right? Well, fast forward 9 years and Kat's out of the mental hospital under a fake name, hitchhiking back to the same school. Why would she go back to the place where she committed double homicide? Because she misses her demon boyfriend, or like demon friend. It's not really clear why she likes this demon so much, but it's the only thing that cares about her, so she loves it in some sort of way. During her possession, the demon was the only thing that made Kat feel special and loved. When they exorcised it out of her, she begged it not to leave. Most people would be grateful to have an evil spirit removed from their body, but Kat was heartbroken, so she spends 9 years planning her return. She gets a ride from this sweet older couple who treats her with nothing but kindness. They buy her food, they're worried about her, they genuinely care about her well-being. And how does Kat repay them? She murders both of them and cuts their heads off. Kat drags their severed heads into the school's old basement, sets up the candles, and performs the same ritual that summoned the demon in the first place. She's convinced that if she offers enough human sacrifice, her demon will come back to her. Except the demon doesn't want her anymore. The furnace where she first met her supernatural boyfriend is stone cold empty. The demon has moved on to possess other people in other places, and Kat is just another ex that won't stop calling. She collapses on the floor sobbing because she's killed innocent people for nothing. The thing she loved most in the world couldn't care less about her, and now she's alone with what she's done. Even Satan has standards apparently, and Kat didn't make the cut. Honestly, my love life can relate a lot to Kat's. Like, ignoring cutting off 2 old people's heads. I didn't do that. Editor, cut that out, please. So yeah, Kat killed strangers for a demon, but Laura killed someone she loved. In the orphanage, Laura moves her family into the old orphanage where she grew up, planning to reopen it for disabled children. Her son Simon starts playing with invisible friends who seem to know way too much about the building's history. When Simon disappears during a house party, Laura spends months searching for him. She brings in psychics, she plays children's games with the ghost, she follows clues that lead her through every room in the house. Laura becomes convinced that the spirits of dead mothers are trying to help her find Simon, and maybe they are, but the problem is, Simon never left the house. Remember that day when Laura was getting ready for the party and Simon kept bothering her about his imaginary friends? She gave him some medicine to make him sleepy, then blocked off a door with a heavy piece of furniture to keep party guests out of a certain room. Well, Simon followed his friends into a hidden room behind that door. When Laura moved the furniture, she trapped him inside. The medicine made him too groggy to call for help, and the room was soundproof. He fell and hit his head trying to get out. Laura spent months looking for her son while his body was decomposing 10 feet away from her bedroom. And all those supernatural games the ghost taught her, they were trying to lead her to Simon's body. Every creepy noise, every mysterious clue, every terrifying encounter was just dead children trying to reunite a mother with her lost boy. When Laura finally finds Simon's remains, she can't handle the guilt. She takes pills and chooses to die rather than live with what she did. The ending shows her ghost taking care of all the orphan spirits, including Simon, which is supposed to be sweet, but is actually just incredibly sad. So yeah, Laura killed her child by accident, which honestly seems better than doing it on purpose. In Goodnight Mommy, twin boys live with their mother in a house surrounded by cornfields. Mom comes home from facial surgery with her head wrapped in bandages, and the twins think she's acting weird. She's cold. She ignores one of the boys, and she keeps making strange rules about the house. Obviously, this woman isn't their real mother. She's some kind of imposter who did something terrible to their mom. Time to tie her up and torture her until she confesses. There is just one problem with this plan. One of the twins has been dead for months. Lucas died before the movie even started, and Elias has been talking to his ghost this whole time. Mom isn't ignoring Lucas because she's evil. She's ignoring him because he's not there. She only sets one plate at dinner because there's only one living child in the house. She seems cold and distant because she's trying to deal with a son who refuses to accept that his brother is gone. When Elias ties up his mother and starts torturing her, he thinks he's saving his family from a monster. Really, he's just a traumatized child hurting the one person who's trying to help him process his grief. Mom keeps telling Elias to stop talking to Lucas, stop pretending his dead brother is still around, and stop living in a fantasy world. But Elias can't handle the truth, so he convinces himself that anyone who denies Lucas's existence must be lying. The movie ends with Elias burning down the house with his mother inside, then walking away with imaginary versions of both his mom and his dead brother. His brain creates this perfect family reunion to protect him from understanding what he just did. He gets to live happily ever after in a delusion while his real mother burns to death. Elias chose delusion over reality, but Jong-gu had reality and chose to ignore it. In The Wailing, Jong-gu is a cop in a small village where people keep getting possessed and murdering their families. A mysterious Japanese stranger shows up around the same time as the killings, so naturally everyone assumes he's the demon causing all the chaos. Jong-gu's daughter starts showing signs of possession. Weird rashes, violent outbursts, the usual demonic teenager stuff. He's desperate to save her, so he hires a shaman and teams up with a mysterious woman in white who claims she can help. The woman in white gives Jong-gu very specific instructions. Wait at this exact spot until the rooster crows 3 times. Don't leave no matter what you hear. If you trust me and follow these rules, your daughter will be saved. Jong-gu waits for about 5 minutes before he hears what sounds like his daughter screaming for help. Does he trust the woman who's been right about everything so far? Does he wait for the signal she specifically told him to wait for? Nope. He runs home to help his kid, breaking the protective spell the exact second before it would have worked. Jong-gu finds his daughter in full demon mode. She's already killed her mom and grandmother, and now she stabs Jong-gu too. The Japanese stranger was indeed a demon. The shaman was working with him, and the woman in white was literally the only person trying to save Jong-gu's family. One more crow from that rooster, and everything would have been fine. Jong-gu had the right answer, the right ally, and the right plan. He just couldn't wait 60 more seconds to see it work. The movie ends with Jong-gu dying while the demon takes photos of his corpse for his collection. Sometimes the good guys lose not because they're outmatched, but because they're impatient. Jong-gu ultimately failed because he couldn't wait. But this family failed because they couldn't forgive. In A Tale of Two Sisters, Soo-mi returns from a mental hospital to live with her younger sister, Soo-young, and their evil stepmother. The stepmother treats Soo-young terribly, locking her in closets and leaving bruises on her arms. Soo-mei tries to protect her sister, but every fight just makes things worse. Plot twist number 1, Soo-young has been dead for months. Plot twist number 2, the evil stepmother we've been watching is just Soo-mi's broken mind punishing itself. Plot twist number 3, Soo-young died because 2 people who supposedly loved her were too busy being petty to save her life. What really happened was this: Soo-mei and the stepmother got into a huge fight about the stepmother's affair with Soo-mi's dad. Soo-mei stormed out of the house in anger. The stepmother, also angry, decided to teach Soo-mei a lesson by ignoring her responsibilities. Meanwhile, Soo-young was trying to help their sick mother, who had just hanged herself in Soo-young's bedroom closet. Soo-young attempted to cut the rope, but the heavy wardrobe fell over and trapped her underneath it. She called for help, but the stepmother heard her cries and chose not to respond. She figured Soo-mei could deal with whatever was happening when she got back. Soo-mei never came back in time. Soo-young died alone under that wardrobe, calling for the people who were too angry to care. Soo-mei's guilt over abandoning her sister combined with her rage at the stepmother, so her mind created an elaborate fantasy where she could both be Soo-young getting abused and be herself fighting back. She spent months in a mental hospital acting out this family drama with invisible people. The real stepmother shows up at the end and gets attacked by Soo-young's actual ghost, proving that some wounds never heal, even after death. And there you have it, a bunch of horror endings that somehow get even more disturbing every single time your brain decides to think about them. Some of these are really messed up, and I didn't even know that there was this much lore behind them after researching them, but crazy. Some of these movies are some of the best horror movies of all time, so you gotta watch them. If I missed any of your guys' favorite horror movies with crazy endings like that, make sure to comment them down below. Maybe I'll make a sequel to this video. And as always, if you like my content, hit the like button and subscribe. It is literally the only way that you can tell YouTube that my channel deserves more views. If not, I will go broke and homeless, and it'll be your fault. Just kidding, I'll be fine. Anyways, if you're not ready for bed just yet, you want to watch another one of my videos, you can click the video on screen now.